This week in baseball for January 21st, 2024. Last week was the deadline for teams and players are arbitration eligible to exchange salary figures for the 2024 season. And almost all the players agreed to contracts with the exception of uh, 22 players who have differences in the salaries that the player wants and the team wants to pay. So those can either be decided in the coming weeks or an arbitration hearing will be heard. And the biggest arbitration signing for 2024 was Juan Soto, who signed a 1 year, $31 million contract with the Yankees, which is the record for an arbitration player contract, breaking Otani's contract from 2023. Um, you got anything on arbitration and Juan Soto?
So a lot of the players that have not come to terms with teams, they're not as far apart as you might expect. Like I kind of expected maybe Juan Soto to be one of those guys who ended up going to hearing because he would be asking for 35 and the team would be coming at 31. It turns out that the farthest apart that any two groups are, the player and the club, is actually about $500,000. So there's gonna, and a lot of these guys are younger guys. They don't get paid all that much, but this step is huge for their potential salaries. So out of the 22, Casey Mize has actually already come to an agreement. So there's only 21 left that could potentially go to hearings. Depending on how those hearings go, could set these guys up for either bigger or smaller pay increases here in the future. So but yeah, Soto getting $31 million, topping Otani's previous record of $30 million. That's huge. That is,
Yeah, you almost feel like going back to what you said about there may being like a difference between Soto and the Yankees. It's almost like the Yankees don't want to upset him if they want to have any chance of signing him this upcoming free agent period. So
yeah,
just do what the man wants and go from there.
yeah, and he's definitely a different beast than pretty much anyone else.
Yeah,
So
I mean, how much money has he earned in the arbitration process?
$80 million. I
Yeah,
added this up
80.
the other day. It is a total of 80 million, like 80.5 maybe, I think is the total number. But
Yeah, his
absolutely
total.
nuts.
Yeah, his total amount of salary he would have earned is like 82.3 million. Um, in those first few years, he was making league minimum in like 2018, 2019, 2020, and then from there, when he reached arbitration, he really ramped up, and that's why it's so important for these players to um, get everything they can as they progress through the system.
Well, so an important note, he actually didn't make the league minimum in 2020. He made over the league minimum, but it was the shortened season. So that was the money he was actually paid to play that year. But
He was at basically league minimum that year because
500 and
21 the total cash that he was paid was
oh,
$233,000. So
because he was a Super 2 player. So I feel like that's
right.
weird that he didn't get
But,
some kind of an increase in his first year.
uh, yeah, I don't know how the pre-arb really works, I
Well,
guess.
well, he wasn't pre-arb was my point. He was a Super 2.
He's
So that 2020 would have been his first year of arb.
no. 21, right? So 21, 22, 23, 24, the 4 years of arbitration.
Oh, he didn't get a full year of service time in 18 then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I'm off by a year. All right, we're good.
Um, the Cubs and the Dodgers got together on a trade recently, with the Cubs receiving Michael Bush, a corner infield prospect, and Yency Almonte, a 29-year-old relief pitcher. The Dodgers are getting two really young teenage prospects in Jackson Ferris and Zahir Hope. This is like a rare instance of a trade that has prospects going in both directions, and there's no established major leaguers. So um, on the Cubs side, they get a guy in Bush who was totally blocked with the
Well,
Dodgers.
so Yency Almonte is an established major leaguer.
That's true, yeah.
Um,
But I would say that Bush is the kind of headliner of this trade because he has had um, a lot of hype around him in recent years. He's been featured on top 100 lists, and he just didn't seem to have a fit with the Dodgers. With them signing Otani, that's even one less spot for him to make his mark with that team. And first base and third base are covered for them, and he's not really known as a great defender. It's just his bat that kind of carries his profile as a player. And the Cubs um, need like more offense, and they need guys to play on the corner infield. I think he's going to end up being the first baseman for this team, um, and I think that this trade makes a ton of sense because the Dodgers really needed to free up these roster spots, and they're accumulating talent basically that's maybe not major league ready. It's definitely not. We're talking about 18 and 19-year-old guys, but this is what the Dodgers do. Like they trade their excess guys and they restock their farm system.
Yeah, and Michael Bush was at the end of last year the number 2 prospect in the Dodgers organization. The dude was absolutely raking in the minor leagues, but with Max Muncy, Freddie Freeman, Shohei going to be at DH, like there's just no room for him on the major league roster. And so they're at this point where in order to sign the other players that they have been signing this offseason, they have to clear 40-man spots. They also want to make sure that they are not getting people in return that they're going to have to give a 40-man spot next year to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. This is the exact same situation we saw when they traded when they acquired Victor Gonzalez and Yorbit Vivas.
They traded Victor Gonzalez.
Oh, okay. Yes. This is the exact same thing that happened when they traded Victor Gonzalez and Yorbit Vivas for Trey Sweeney from the Yankees, because Trey Sweeney is not going to be Rule 5 eligible for, I believe, 2 more years. So they're getting some younger talent, some high-end younger talent, which in order to stock their lower minors, develop them, and then once some of the players that are currently on the roster are no longer there, then they can either promote them or they'll kind of wash, rinse, repeat, do the exact same thing all over again. So this is the second trade of this type that the Dodgers have made this offseason, and it makes sense whenever you look at everything else they've done. Like, they're not really going to be relying on a lot of minor leaguers this year. I mean, heck, they're getting Gavin Lux back, and he's probably going to be like the youngest, most unproven player that's on their roster this year, I think. So other than a couple starting pitchers, but
it almost makes you think that they're going to go do something and acquire a more proven shortstop. Like that feels like the one unknown spot, but maybe they'll just ride with Lux and see.
I think they're going to ride with Lux. I don't think there's really all that many shortstops right now to be had.
No, yeah, definitely not in free agency, but go after like a Willie Adames at the trade deadline, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. But then the other part of this trade that we've kind of glossed over, though, is Yency Almonte, he's a 29-year-old relief pitcher. He's thrown about 40 to 50 innings every year for the last about 5 years. And he's had some pretty good seasons, and he's had a couple of pretty bad seasons. So 2020 in the shortened season, he threw about 30 innings, put up half a WAR. 2022, 35 innings, put up half a WAR. Some pretty good ERAs both times. He was just a really, really good pitcher in both of those years. It seems like he does this every other year sort of thing. And 23 was a down year for him. So 24 in the Cubs bullpen, Yency probably going to be amazing, just going based on his own pattern. So I think it's a good move for the Cubs. I think they really were slow off the starting blocks here this year to kind of get something going in the offseason here and improve their roster for 24. And I think making this move, kind of waiting until some things started moving along, I think they got a really good deal here. So it'll be, I'll hate watching every moment of it for very obvious reasons. But for people who like the Cubs, it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, they have a distinct need for power, and Bush, if there's one thing I'm pretty sure he's going to do, it's going to be hitting for power. I mean, maybe strikeout rate's going to hamper him in his major league games, but this guy mashes, and I think he's going to actually have playing time this time. We never really had the chance to see what he could do. Even when he played last year, it was just a very brief cup of coffee.
Yeah, he had 29 home runs total across AAA in the majors, but only 27 games at 2 home runs here in the majors. So the dude definitely has the talent. We'll see what happens.
Okay, moving on to signings. The biggest signing of the past week or so has been the Josh Hader signing. He signed with the Astros for $95 million in 5 years. So that's like just an absolutely massive contract for a relief pitcher. I mean, I think it technically it's not more money than Edwin Diaz got, but this contract has no deferred money in it. So it's just straight 95 million over 5 years. And um, I was just shocked that the Astros actually did this, because the Astros are not typically a team that's going out and spending a lot of money in free agency. They've kind of always done it through their own internal development trades, and this is a little bit different than the normal Astros move.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Astros lost Phil Maton to free agency, and I believe, not mistaken, so Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek, Hector Neris, and so they do still have their closer from last year in Ryan Presley, but they needed to do something to kind of fill those voids, because those are 3 pitchers that they relied on quite a bit here in the last few years. So
and to add on, Kendall Graveman, it was just announced that he's going to miss the entire season with a shoulder injury. So that's another guy that they'll be missing.
Yeah, so they needed to do something just to kind of bolster their bullpen. Josh Hader everyone knows what Josh Hader can do. The man has put up at least 1.5 WAR every single season, with the exception of the shortened 2020 season and 2022, where he kind of struggled across both Milwaukee and San Diego. But the dude is a beast. So I think I have fewer reservations about the Astros signing him than I did the Mets signing Edwin Diaz. I still think this is a massive contract for a reliever, because it is, but I'm a little bit less worried about this one than the Diaz.
That's interesting. Why would you say you're less concerned? Just because of his track record more than anything?
Yeah, his track record, and he really hasn't ever been an injury-prone guy. I mean, he's made 55 or more appearances every season except his debut season.
That's true. Yeah, he does stay on the field, and I know there's like a perceived, almost like an ego. Or like people think that he has some kind of ego because he never wants to pitch like multi-inning games the last few years, or what kind of wants to limit his back-to-backs and whatever. I'm curious if that almost changes now that he's actually like secured the bag, and now he'll go multi-inning. He'll go out of the ninth inning exclusively. I think like I could see him being even more valuable than he's been at least a couple first few years of this deal.
See, I don't think they're going to need him to do that. And at the same time, he's been way more effective when he hasn't done that. Is like he's been fantastic his entire career minus 2022, which at the end of the season he was fantastic again. But when he was pitching 80 innings a year, 75 innings a year, like he was in the high 2s for ERA. As soon as he started pitching like 60 appearances, but they were all single inning appearances, and so he was finishing the season with between 50 and 60 innings. His ERA has been down in the low 1s. So it's like, I don't know if he found another gear, he worked on a pitch, or it's just like not being used that much, but still being used every day has allowed him to basically rear back a little bit more, be a little bit more effective, and it's kind of helped him improve his numbers even more. Part of that also is the fact that he just kind of quit giving up home runs. But you know,
Yeah, no, that I think that's a good point on the home runs. Like last 2 years, he's not given up hardly any home runs, and before that, that was like his one bugaboo. He was pretty much the same pitcher with giving up a bunch of home runs.
yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be awesome for that back end of the bullpen because now they have Presley, who's been a great closer for a long time for them. Brian Abreu, who's just a beast, and then Hader. So you got like a three-headed monster of um, really good stuff at the back of their bullpen. So
And then you still have some other guys in there that are intriguing, like Brandon Belak, JP France, like not anyone who's like shown just pure dominance out of the bullpen, but some guys that have really, really talented arms. So this could be a scary not rotation, a scary bullpen on paper, which every year we talk about that, and then it on paper and in reality don't always match, but you know, it is what it is.
no, they're setting themselves up for success, and like you mentioned, like they're backfilling the guys that they're going to probably be missing this upcoming season, and Hader's the guy to do it for sure. Um, on the news, on the heels of the Hader deal, Robert Stevenson, who was one of the most sought after relievers this offseason, signed with the Angels, 3 years and 30 million. The Robert Stevenson story is very interesting to me because he was just a guy for years and years. Former first round pick. Uh, he struggled through some seasons. He's had some okay seasons. Um, Last year he started with the Pirates and gave up something like 9 runs in his first 14 innings, and he got traded to the Rays. And the Rays turned him into a super dominant back end of the bullpen guy that seemingly came out of nowhere. Like the guy's always thrown hard. He's always had a good slider and everything, but they totally unlocked him to the tune of like a 43% strikeout rate, um, a ridiculous strikeout to walk ratio. Like this guy was one of the best relievers in 2023. And based on that small sample, like I'm very happy for Robert Stevenson. He totally deserves to go out and get paid. But like the amount of time that he's been like this guy versus the rest of his career um is the biggest concern that I have for Robert Stevenson. Like he's awesome.
So
I want to be awesome, but I'm scared that he's going to turn back into a pumpkin.
so his 2023, if you look at his stat line on Fangraphs, it looks like they just copied one of Hader's like pre 2021 Hader seasons, pasted it in here in Robert Stevenson's page, and then he's getting paid really, really well for it, and he deserves it. He earned it, and he's had some other really good seasons. 2019 with the Reds was pretty much the same as last year with a lower strikeout rate, but like he's shown the ability to be this guy in the past. He's never been on a club that's necessarily been good for helping pitchers improve. He's always been on teams that kind of just expect you to know how to pitch, and that's how they're going to use you. It's just however you come, that's what it's going to be. Now he's going to a team that every single year, without fail, we talk about how bad they are at pitching, developing pitchers, helping pitchers improve, using their pitchers. No pitcher has signed with the Angels and had a good season the next year. So I'm really worried that Robert Stevenson is going to follow the very, very, very long track record of the Angels not knowing what they're doing.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, even with their starting pitchers this year, there are a number of guys that are very intriguing to me, like Chase Silseth, Reed Detmers, uh, Griffin Canning. Those guys are
Pablo
all
Sandoval's
like,
still there.
yeah, Patrick Sandoval.
Patrick,
Wrong,
whatever.
wrong panda.
Whatever, same thing.
Irish panda.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Irish Panda.
but yeah, like those guys, I see like good, really interesting things that they're doing, and then somehow they don't really reach their potential. So I'm hoping that's not the case for Stevenson because I think he can be. If he's that guy that he was last year, then he's like a lockdown, surefire ninth inning guy that is gonna be awesome for that team.
Now, the one thing that we should probably remember here is that the Angels cleaned house on their coaching staff. So
Right.
there is a chance that this new coaching staff comes in and does actually kind of know what they're doing. They're able to help these guys improve and get this team of actually pretty talented ball players to play like a team of talented ball players. Something that hasn't been done on the in Orange County for a long time.
That's a good point. I think they've got a new pitching coordinator, Barry Enright. He worked with Brent Strom in Arizona, so maybe he can take some of his wisdom and give it to Angels pitchers, and they can have some success.
All right. So what do you say we talk about the big signing or the other big signing, I guess.
The other big signing. So
the other big signing.
Yankees signed Marcus Stroman to a 2-year, $37 million deal with the vesting option for 2026. This one makes sense for the Yankees because they really need pitching and they probably need more after this. But on Stroman's side, it's almost like he left more money for 2024 on the table by declining his player option with the Cubs, and he didn't, like, you could argue that he did better because he got more years out of it, but he's taken less money to do it.
Yeah, so Stroman is not the guy he used to be. He's not the number 2 in the rotation guy. He's not that far from it though. Like he's still probably a lower number 3, high number 4 for a lot of clubs. He had a dominant first half with the Cubs last season. Second half, he kind of fell off. He made 27 or 25 starts, came into 2 other games apparently in relief. Didn't realize that. But like he's not the workhorse that he used to be, going out and throwing 200 innings. He's throwing about 130, 135, somewhere in there with a high 3 ERA and still putting up a respectable couple WAR seasons. And in fact, he hasn't been under 2 WAR since 2018. So, like he's a very respectable pitcher. 2 years, what is it, $18.5 million a year. With a vesting option for 2026 if he pitches 140 innings in 2025, which looking at his last couple seasons, that's going to be kind of a toss-up on if he can reach 140. If he does, it'd essentially become a 3-year, $55 million deal. So Stroman is a plus for this rotation. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think he's quite what they need. I think they needed to go out and kind of assert their Yankees dominance, get another top of the line starter, and like I would be very happy to have a pitcher with Marcus Stroman's abilities on this club if I were a fan. I'm not a very big fan of his personality, so that's why I phrased it the way I did. But they also went out and signed Luke Weaver, another starting pitcher, 1 year, $2 million with a club option for 25 that can between 6.5 up to, or sorry, 2.5 up to 6 million for the option, depending on how many innings he pitches this year. But so it just feels like they're getting depth starters right now instead of that impact starter. And we still have Jordan Montgomery. We still have Blake Snell on the free agent market. So I would be looking and asking the Yankees to go out and make another big splash on one of those 2 guys. They're familiar with Monty. I don't know if he's necessarily wanting to go back. Maybe he is, but they didn't really treat him all that well the first time. Um, but he's a little bit more consistent than Blake. Blake has the higher talent level than Monty, but he's going to come with some ups and some downs throughout the course of the season. So those are the two guys that the Yankees should still be in on, even with signing Marcus Stroman. So we'll see if it happens.
Like I agree, they should go out and get a high upside guy, but I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to just be banking on Carlos Rodon and Nestor Cortez to get healthy. Which, if they do, then you're really talking. Like then you've got yourself a really strong top three, and Stroman's your four, and then Clark Schmidt and whoever else is the back end. Like in theory, it's okay the way it is, but when we start talking about the health of those guys, like that constantly are getting hurt, it's like it makes sense why they're going out and they're signing like a Stroman and a Luke Weaver, because they simply need innings more than anything.
They
Actually,
need live arms.
yeah.
So the Yankees should just give me a league minimum contract, and I'll go throw some innings for him.
What do you think your ERA would be?
With the short porch, I'd say maybe 4.7.
Okay.
So, okay. Sorry, that was 47.
47. Okay,
yeah, that was 47.
Yeah.
So
I thought you were about to trying to say that you were better than Clark Schmidt, but
well, I am, but also my ERA would be a 47.
Okay. But speaking of live arms, Jordan Hicks signed with the Giants for $44 million in 4 years, and the big news is that he's going to be stretched out as a starter. So, guy who's been a reliever for almost his entire career, with the exception of 8 starts in 2022, is going to try to go back and be a starter. He's a electric talent, insane arm, like 99th percentile arm in Major League Baseball right now. I just do not see his command working for him to be a starting pitcher in this league. That's been his like issue that he's dealt with from time to time. Like he'll have stretches of absolute dominance where no one can get a hit off him because his ball is moving the way it does at the speed that it does, and then other times guy cannot hit the plate, like he's just walking batters left and right, and that level of inconsistency does not play well in a starting role. But I don't know, like, do you think the Giants can fix Hicks?
As a starter, no. Because his entire profile is nothing is going to be over the plate. Period. If it's over the plate, he's actually not pitching as well as he can, because his profile
is kind of hittable, right?
Exactly. He's incredibly hittable if he stays over the plate. His entire shtick is that he has so much movement and so much velocity that you see this ball coming in 105 and you think it's going to stay in, and then it dips out. And so you swing, you miss. That's how he ends up pitching or playing well. He actually doesn't have great strikeout numbers across his career in general. He ends up inducing a lot of weak contact on his 105-mile-an-hour sinker. Just people kind of chopping it to the first baseman, chopping it to the third baseman, just getting a little bit lucky on making contact with it. But you can't make good contact on something that hard. That's really the only pitch that I think could maybe sort of translate to starting role. But if he's not able to get that slider to work effectively in the zone, I don't see that working. And like even his 8 starts in 2022, he never really got out of the third inning. Like it was almost more of an opener situation most of those times, because he still only had 60 innings in the course of the season with 35 appearances. So like stretching him out didn't work the first time. He's had Tommy John. Like I don't see this going particularly well.
Now that you mentioned the short starts, and the Giants' recent history with their starters, you almost wonder what the role is really going to be. Maybe he's not supposed to be a traditional starter. Maybe he is going to be more like a one time through the order 3 inning starter.
Yeah,
And
that could
that
be
might go
if
better. Yeah.
that could be, and if that's their plan, I could see it being effective if they have a bullpen who is able to shoulder that extra workload, because they had like 2 legitimate starters last year until they called up what's his name?
Kyle Harrison.
Yeah, until they called up Kyle Harrison, they really only had 2 starters. And then they finally had a third, but you would still have 2 bullpen games throughout an entire turn through the rotation. And they were able to do it, but I wouldn't expect them to be able to do that 2 years in a row, because that's a lot. You're taxing a lot of people's arms. You almost have to have full bullpen turnover at that point just to be able to do that. So,
yeah, absolutely. A couple other signings. Yariel Rodriguez, a Cuban player, has signed with the Blue Jays for 4 years and $32 million. He pitched overseas in Japan for the last few years. He didn't pitch in the 2023 season at all. He did flash in the WBC for Team Cuba, and he's a young pitcher. So the Blue Jays are kind of shooting for the moon here and seeing if they can catch some lightning in a bottle here, because like the guy, we don't really know a whole lot about him right now, and where he fits with the 2024 team, but it's just like a gamble that he can give them innings, whether that's in a relief role or whether that's as a starter. He's just another arm for them. And
so is this essentially the Blue Jays version of Yasmani Tomas signing? Basically, give a guy like a fairly good salary for a couple different years, hope that he can pan out in the major leagues. Yasmani Tomas for the Diamondbacks did not. Like, he just never really made the majors, but like, it's a guy who we don't really know that much about him because we don't really get to see him. He hasn't pitched in a year. Like, they're giving him the money based on talent, which he has a lot of, but results, we don't know how it's going to work. So you're giving a guy a big contract based on talent and not really recent results. It feels like a pitching version of Yasmani Tomas.
the only difference between Yasmani Tomas and this, I mean, I see a lot of differences, but the biggest one is that was like a albatross contract. That was a 6 year, $68.5 million contract. It was the biggest contract the Diamondbacks had given out in their entire history. And the guy was like just a major bust. This is like a significantly lower risk than that one.
Okay, that's fair. Although it's $10 million, or just like $10.2 million a year versus $8 million a year. The difference is the length.
Versus 6,
yeah. But I don't know. I still think it's a fair comp.
Hey man, it's not my money. If they want to give this guy $8 million a year, that's fine with me.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. Speaking of, it's not my money. That seems to be the entire Cardinals Twitter right now, because I don't know if you saw this, but Matt Carpenter is back with the Birds for 2024 on a 1-year league minimum deal to be the 26th man on the roster. He's still getting paid $5 million by the Padres not to play for them, mind you. But yeah, so Matt Carpenter's back. He'll be a bench guy, and Cardinals Twitter hates it with a fiery burning passion. They actually are on the side of the team needs to just sell off everybody worth anything and go through a full Chicago rebuild. You pick your Chicago team. They just want to rebuild. Because Matt Carpenter signed as the 26th man.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the 26 man's the player on the roster that changes the most during the season, right? Matt Carpenter is not guaranteed even to make the team, right? Yeah. Maybe he shows up to spring and he's like so bad that someone beats him out, and like his role is not a sure thing, I would say, and that position will likely change throughout the year with minor league guys, maybe a free agent signing. But for whatever reason, fans seem to get up in arms about who that guy is because it changes so much. But that's like the least of their worries, right? It's the starters, the starting pitchers, and those are the things that you should be up in arms about, if anything.
Well, and then their other argument is the Cardinals said they brought him in for leadership. So they're like, well, did they not trust Arenado and Goldschmidt? We might as well just trade him. It's like, well, no, Arenado specifically last year said that he felt like there was not enough leadership. There was one or two people that was expected to be the leader of the team. And like, people lead in different ways. Some lead by example, some lead by experience, some lead by, like that. That's why they went out and got Matt Carpenter, is because he's been there, done that. He knows how the Cardinals, how that organization likes to do things, and he can help coach these young guys to play into that and use it to their benefit. And then just everyone's up in arms like, well, if he's the leader and they bring in Lance Lynn and him to be the leaders of the club, we should just trade everyone else. It's like, that's not, no. You guys are dumb. Did you ever play sports at any level? I was a leader and I was a bench warmer. I'm Matt Carpenter.
Okay.
I never touched the field, the court, nothing. And that was fine. But I was a clubhouse guy.
Clubhouse guy, yeah. Yeah, you can't have too much leadership, right?
Yeah. So people need to just get their panties out of a bunch and just move on. It'll be okay.
We got one more note here on the Orioles and their new academy. Where's their academy?
It is in the DR, I believe.
Okay, so they're continuing their scouting and development improvement and setting up their long-term success by signing 19 international free agents during this signing period. And that's clearly the way they've decided they're going to build their team, through international signings and then through the draft and development of stateside players.
Yeah. Which I won't lie, this is an organization that has been so bad historically of scouting, development, just getting talent into their system naturally, that the only chance they ever had over the past 25 years was to go out and sign big free agents to massive contracts like Chris Davis. That didn't pan out. And finally, with Mark Elias and some of these other people that they brought in, they're trying to change the culture of the organization, and they're doing a really good job of it. I mean, bringing in 19 international free agents in the signing period, that's a lot. If I remember correctly, about 9 of them, I think, were in the top 100 international prospects. So, or international amateur prospects. So, like, that's a big deal. The fact that they were able to get that much talent to want to sign with them as teenagers, like, that's a big deal. It means that they're moving in the right direction. Now, we still can't forgive them for not actually spending any money on their current club and just expecting these young guys to come up and carry them to a World Series.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got to like shore up this team, right? You can say, yeah, they were a playoff team last year. They're good. They don't need to do anything. They'll be fine. But I mean, they lost Kyle Gibson. They're just going to bank on whoever from the minor leagues to fill those innings. I mean, that might work, but I feel like they should try to do a little more than what they've done so far.
Yeah. So, come on, Orioles. We're finally starting to praise you a little bit consistently. Let's quit being dumb.
All right. That's going to wrap things up for this episode. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Peace.
If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and YouTube to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. Join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Getaway Day Pod. If you enjoy card collecting, check out our sister YouTube channel at Getaway Day Cards.